if I want a boat, I would now ask myself, which of my needs is that meeting? Is it because I want more variety in my life and I want to go out and want to go fishing and water skiing and all that, or diving or whatever, right? Is it a way to meet a variety? Or is it I just want the boat so I'm more significant? So I've got a boat parking out the front of the house and all my neighbours see it and then I look more significant. Is to have the boat a great way to get the family together every holiday to go out and do something?
Welcome to the Business Bloke podcast. Growing your business doesn't have to be hard. I am your host, Andrew Savage, a business and mindset coach with plenty of leadership tools and strategies to help you grow your life and business. Give yourself permission to get curious, lean in, and enjoy this episode.
Today in the studio, I have Mr. Shane Bird. Shane is a life coach and has recently gone on to actually coaching coaches, but historically has been in the business of coaching farmers. Welcome to the studio, Shane.
Mate, pleasure to be here.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm pretty excited to have you here because you've got a lot to offer. And today we're going to catch up and talk about values, needs and wants. But before we do, I'd love to hear something about yourself that most people don't actually know.
Well, a good bunch of people know this, but not everyone, I guess. I was a radio bullfighter for 19 years, mostly in New Zealand, but I did fight bulls in Australia, and I went to Canada twice for 3 months and fought bulls over there over a couple of different years as well, which was really fun, really exciting, a good way to see different parts of the world and meet some really cool people as well.
Holy smoke. And you live to tell the story.
Mate, I'm still alive, got the scars to prove it.
It's pretty full on as you look back on that on pride, I guess, and excitement. Yeah. So values, needs and wants. Like there's a lot of talk about how we engage staff into our businesses. A lot of companies, have their company values. I kind of struggle a little bit that a company can have values, and sometimes they use it as a bit of a scapegoat to say, hey, we've got our values, so we don't need to sort of worry about our people's values. But I feel like the values, needs and wants is kind of like our operating system, and it's the things that make us tick. It's like really important. I'd love for you to touch on the three, maybe starting with values. Like, what are values, and how come they're so important?
Yeah, and there's lots of different ways that people look at values and explain values. The way that I explain it, or the way that I look at it, is a value is something that's important to you. Now, people might think more material positions, like there's primary values and secondary values. A secondary value is a material position, something you can put in a wheelbarrow. So people go, well, something that's important to me is money, is a house to live in, is family members and stuff like that, is a job and stuff like that. That's actually, for me, the way I explain it is a secondary value. What I'm looking for is the primary value, which is a feeling that you want to feel, an emotion that you want to experience often in your life. So when you think about money, well, what's the emotion you think about when you have money? What's the emotion you think about when you don't have money? When you think about family, what's the emotion that you think about when you think about family or you have family? What's the emotion you have from all those material possessions, or those that tangible thing, like the tangible things like a job, for example. Whereas an intangible thing is the emotion that comes with that, or the feeling, the experience that you get from that as well. So I like to I can look at the external things, those tangible things, but I'm more interested in those intangible things, those internal feelings that you get, and looking at those from a values perspective, because at the end of the day, everything we do is to create some sort of feeling, or going to create some sort of emotional feeling anyway. So if we value like connection, for example, we're going to find ways to do things to have more connection. Well, that's going to be have a family. That's being a work environment with lots of different people, because there's connection involved in that. Whereas if you don't value connection, you might be single, or you might only have one child, for example, and you might have a job that's more of an individualized type job where you're just working on your own. So values, again, to link back to the question, is what are values? What values are what's important to you on an internal level, because that's what unconsciously we're seeking by doing all those external things.
That makes perfect sense. And I love how you talk about connection, because that's what I try and talk to my clients about. They might say, hey, I've got my company values poked up on the wall, and they're integrity and trust and all of these sort of big words. But really, connection is a really great example of how someone may get connection in their workplace, or potentially, like you said, they may be seeking connection somewhere else. And I've seen job advertisements and things like that where they have offered people a day off on their birthday, as if it's a bonus. That potentially that person who could be a good candidate for that role is going, well, I don't want a day off for my birthday. I actually don't. I don't seek connection at home. I'm home by myself, for example. I actually seek connection at work, and that potentially isn't a good thing.
So 100%, mate.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What are some examples of values that, I guess common values that you find people, or are they really just an individual thing? And because sometimes I think people will sort of segment values and say these are the values you must choose from, but they're actually quite broad, aren't they?
Oh, 100%. And I think there's something like 2,500 different names of emotions or feelings that you can have in the dictionary. So I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, these are the values you have to choose on. There's common ones like love and connection and stuff like that, happiness, joy, fulfillment, and things like that. But when I'm working with someone, I don't say, hey, these are the values you need to choose from. Tell me what's important to you about this. And then I'll have a conversation around, if they give me a tangible thing again, like a money thing or something like that, or a job or things like that. Then I go, well, how does it make you feel? And security might be one as well, for example. So I'm more interested in just having that conversation around finding out how people language it themselves. And people might language the same kind of value in different ways. Like it might be joy or it might just be happiness, right? But that could mean two different things to two different people as well. So it's more about having that conversation to the individual of what are those things that you use, what are the words you use that you find value in.
That's awesome. It's like we could go down a big rabbit hole here, but it's really... I'd love to touch on needs as well, because we've got our values and people have needs, and there are actually 6 core needs that you've spoken about before and Tony Robbins talks about as well. Are you able to touch on those and how they are so important?
Yeah, and like the needs, to some degree, they're like a really high value. Like the 4 primary needs are connection or love and connection. The second one is significance. The third one's variety. And the fourth one is certainty, right? So we all crave those. We crave those 4 needs at some level, and we always find a way to meet those needs. Now, the thing is, we value those needs in different order. Some of us will value certainty more than anything else. Some of us will value significance more than anything else. Some will value connection more, and some will value variety more. And it's important to understand what people crave the most, because then we can help them find a way to meet that. So if you link it back to in the workplace, if you've got someone who's like craves a lot of variety and you've got them in a job that's just like in a factory line doing the same stuff over and over again, they're going to get real bored real fast, because that's just not what they do. Like a sharer wouldn't crave a lot of variety. Or maybe they do, but they get the certainty in their life by just doing the same job, sharing 300 sheep the same way every day. But then maybe their variety comes through what they do outside of the sharing sheet, after hours and stuff like that. So it's important to understand how do people value their needs, or the hierarchy they have for those needs, and how do they meet those needs? And then are they meeting them in a functional way or a dysfunctional way? Because again, if you've got a dysfunctional behavior, you can guarantee it's meeting one of those needs: the certainty, the uncertainty, the variety. Certainty, the variety, which is uncertainty, the love and connection or significance. If you've got a dysfunctional behavior, it's meeting one of those needs at a really high level. And when we meet those needs at a high level, if we find out that it meets our highest need at a high level, we're going to find more ways to do that. And it's quite often become a dysfunctional behavior. If you meet 3 of those needs at an 8 out of 10 or higher, it becomes an addiction. And it's really important to recognize that, if I've got an addiction, it's just meeting those needs. Well, how can I meet that need in a functional way rather than a dysfunctional way?
Have you got some examples of things that your clients do potentially that meet them in dysfunctional ways?
Oh, I could give you a whole stack load of ones for clients, but why not just give you some personal examples, right? So drinking for me, growing up early on, like drinking was my way. What I recognize now, I didn't know at the time, but I recognize now, drinking met all 4 of my needs on a very, very high level, right? So I would drink, and I knew it was going to bring a lot of variety, because I didn't know what I was going to do once I was drunk. You get 4 beers in, it's like, who knows what the night's going to bring now? So I brought a whole lot of variety. Brought connection, because everyone else was at the pub or at the bar or at the party as well, drinking as well. So there's a high level of connection, right? I then took on this belief, because I felt very insignificant in my life at those days. I was like, well, this is a great way for me to actually be significant. So I'm going to drink the most for the longest. Well, I didn't always get to that point, but I thought if I drink the most and for the longest, that would make me more significant. So now it meets those 3 needs at a very, very high level. And then it gave me the certainty that I was going to fit in and feel okay, feel safe. because I was with all these other people doing all these things, and I felt like that I was significant, right? So I meet all my 4 needs on a very high level. No wonder it became an addiction that every weekend or most weekends I was out partying. I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic that it was every night, but I knew that if I was having one, I was going to have 21, and it was most weekends. But it was a dysfunctional behavior in order to meet my needs at a very high level. Now, the other 2 needs, which we haven't mentioned yet, but that's like contribution and growth. When I was drinking, there was no contribution really, and other than buying a round of beers, but there was no growth in my life either. So I didn't meet my spiritual needs. The other 4 are the primal needs that Tony Robbins talks about. The spiritual needs are the ones that really fulfill us the most. What I recognized was when I was fighting rodeo bulls, I was able to meet all of my needs, all 6 of my needs at a very high level. So when you're in the rodeo arena, you're very significant as a rodeo bullfighter. You stand out, you get called out a lot, but you're there to do a job which is highly dangerous. So you become very significant to not just the bull rider, but everyone else in the arena or on the stands as well watching. It also gave me a great level of connection because I was extremely connected to the other bull rider while he was riding, plus the other bullfighter, plus I was connected to the bull too. So high level of connection, right, comes in through that as well. Gave me a whole lot of certainty, because I knew I was going to feel good in that environment, right? Massive amount of certainty as well. And then also gave me a whole lot of variety because I had no idea what was going to happen. That bull could have come out and done anything. So get all 4 of my primal needs, like I would say at a 12 out of 10. And then it gave me a sense of contribution because I was contributing to the other bull rider and all the other riders. And it gave me a lot of growth because I was always growing and learning more around how to, like animal stockmanship and stuff like that, but also just stretching myself out of my comfort zone as well. So the good thing about rodeo bullfighting met all 6 of my needs at a very high level. So I became addicted to it. And that's why I did it for 19 years all around the world, which was a great functional way for me to meet my needs. And now if I think about coaching, it meets all those same needs as I was as a rodeo bullfighter. Coaching is the same thing. It meets all of my needs on a very high level. So it's no wonder I get so much fulfillment out of this.
This aspect has been really, really powerful for me in my journey. And these 6 core needs, you might think are fluffy, but we actually can't survive without them. Love and connection is something that we needed from the womb, is my understanding. And if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be here. But what I have found is you can't unsee this stuff, especially around significance. And it's not that we profile people. I spent 10 years in the police profiling people, but you start to really become aware of how people behave around you and what needs that they hold in the highest regard. And I'm sure that's something you've seen as well.
Yeah, 100%. And all it does is it gives you a better understanding of the person. So then you can have a better conversation. And then when you have a conversation, you can understand where they're coming from, why they're producing behaviors, but also have a conversation around ways to help them change those behaviors if they're open to that idea.
Yeah, it's really, really. And I think if you're an employer, or even if you're a solopreneur or a farmer, is actually tapping into these things. And even if you're trolling social media, you'll actually see how people see significance or connection and things through the way that they're posting or the way that they're interacting with other people's posts.
Yeah, and people will post something that's really great happening in their life to make them feel significant, or they'll post some shit that's happened. Oh, my husband or my wife just left me, da-da-da-da-da. What are they getting? They're getting significance and they're seeking connection from some other people to support them.
Yeah, and there's people that always seem to have a problem like that, don't they? Like you think, how does drama seem to attach itself to this person?
Yeah, and it's just, it brings a lot of, it brings the significance, but it brings the connection as well. And I always use this example, like imagine if, the farmer goes to the pub every Friday night just to catch up with the lads, and he's sitting around talking and he kind of feels like he doesn't fit in with the group or anything. Like maybe he just feels like a bit of an outsider. And then one day he has this real shitty week or a real shitty day at work, and he comes in and he talks about something that went bad on the farm. And then all of a sudden, all the other farmers are like, yeah, I hate it when that happens. Yeah. And the conversation revolves around that one shitty thing that happened. He downloads the belief that the greatest way to fit in and have connection is have more problems. So what does he do next Friday when he comes back? He talks about some other shit that happened on the farm. And then he starts making up stuff. And it just manifests into this, I now understand or now believe this is my best way to get connection so that I feel like I fit in, but it's a dysfunctional way. And then it just, manifests into more shitty stories, which is not the best thing as well. Rather than going out and achieving something great and having something great and finding the way to have that connection through that conversation. Because what quite often happens is if I talk about something great that I've achieved, then I might make other people feel bad and it'll give me the tall poppy syndrome, and that'll create a disconnection. And then, who am I to say how great I am when other people have got a shit thing in their life? And it's easier just to talk about the shit stuff and support have compassion and empathy for someone in a shitty situation.
And I think you mentioned manifestation too, and it's just a real slippery slope in a spiral, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And if you get caught in that, and once you recognize that it's meeting, well, you probably don't recognize, but if it's meeting those needs of significance or connection, you just keep looking for more ways to meet that it's an easiest way to do it.
It's unbelievable. I think it's really important for people to know, especially in our circles with agribusiness professionals, sales people even, they're interacting with people out there, and it's recognizing these signs of why people behave the way they do. The other thing I was pretty keen to touch on was wants as well. They play a part in all of this as well. What's your take on wants, and, why do we want stuff? And, we want the new boat, we want the new car. What drives all that sort of stuff? Because sometimes that's the thing that gets us out of bed. But yeah, how important is wants, and how does that all make you tick?
Well, I think the easiest way to relate it to this conversation is a want is something we desire that we currently don't have. And in my interpretation of it. So if I want a boat, I would now ask myself, which of my needs is that meeting? Is it because I want more variety in my life and I want to go out and want to go fishing and water skiing and all that, or diving or whatever, right? Is it a way to meet a variety? Or is it I just want the boat so I'm more significant? So I've got a boat parking out the front of the house and all my neighbours see it, and then I look more significant. Is to have the boat a great way to get the family together every holiday to go out and do something for more connection? Okay, so I would be asking myself, if I want something that I don't currently have, which of my needs is it meeting? And is this a functional thing to want in order to get that need? Or is there a better way to meet those needs? Do I need to spend $50,000 on a boat? Or could I meet those needs in a way that, $50,000 that I don't have? And when I say that, if you've got 50 grand to spend on a boat, then spend it on a boat, absolutely. But if you don't have $50,000 and you're going to put yourself in a financially stressed position to do it, just to meet those needs, it's probably not the smartest decision. So what is it you want? What's the need that it's going to meet by having that thing? Or what's the need you perceive you're going to have? That's probably a better question by having that thing.
So I'd love to know what sort of questions you ask people, because having a need or a want, it can really eat someone up, right? Like my son, he wanted a motorbike, and he is just every waking day, I want a motorbike. And I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with the child that just has to have that thing, and life can't continue without that. It could even just be a lollipop for little kids. What sort of questions do you ask people to try and, I guess, reframe or really question them as to, do they really need that thing?
Yeah. The easiest question is, for what purpose? For what purpose do we want that? And then they'll say, who knows what the answer would have been for one of the kids with the motorbike, but it's around understanding for what purpose and what it's going to mean. What it normally goes, start have a want. You go, for what purpose? I'll tell you a value that they probably want to get out of it. For what purpose do you want that? I'll tell you a need that they're going to meet out of it. When we understand that, or if you can guide them to understand, to get to that point of the need that they're going to meet, then go, okay, cool. Is having that motorbike the best way to meet that need? Or is there something else that we can do or have in order to meet that need, which would be a more resourceful way to do it?
I see this a lot in farm succession, which really is quite damaging, where, a sibling or a son or a daughter or someone may, want to be a part of the farming business, but they really clash with their parents or what have you in the value space as well. Have you got any advice for people who are maybe in that farm succession piece about how they actually unpack, how they can basically try and make this work, or really dig deep into that space?
Yeah, I would be, as the one coming in, I'd have the conversation with the parents around what they value, what they valued in life, and what they valued in farming and the way that they'll run their farm. But then it's also about, well, what do I see as the best way for me to do that? Because my understanding from all the farm succession stuff that I've seen is there's always a resistance when someone comes in and changes it. Like if son come in and just did everything exactly the same way dad did, there'd be no conflict, because father would be happy that it's just been continued exactly the same way. But the son quite often has different ideas. Maybe they've been overseas or they've been on other farms and they've got different ideas and ways to improve, what they perceive to improve the farm. And then go, well, how do I approach that conversation around making those changes? But also you want to check out, what's the father's interpretation of what those changes mean? And what I've noticed a lot is a lot of times if a father is running down the son on the way he's running the farm since he's taken over, It's probably because he's got a fear that the son's going to do a better job, which means he's going to get higher results, which means the father looks less in the eyes of others. So he looks less significant. So he's going to try and run the son down so he doesn't outperform him, because if he outperforms, then I was a shit farmer. So it's around recognizing if that's a pattern, and then go, well, how can I recognize or let dad recognize that he did everything as well as he possibly could have in the economic climate and the technology, the technology that was available and everything else that was available while he was farming in his time. And it's all about the evolution that, well, if I keep doing what they did, then I'm going to get left behind because inflation and everything else is going up, and I'm just going to get left behind in the farming sector. Whereas if I can improve the farm, then it's gonna grow with inflation and stuff as well.
It's really important. I've had some really interesting conversations, and I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but and this is probably sneaking back to values a little bit. But speaking to an older farmer who's having this succession discussion, and he's saying, the son isn't doing it how I would like to do it, but mostly it's around he's off at school assembly or he's down at the beach or whatever, and I never had a day off the farm. I've generated as much wealth as I possibly can because I value freedom really highly, and I wanted to retire with enough money that I can have choice and have freedom and travel. And when you talk to the son, he actually says, well, actually, I'm not getting on with dad. He doesn't see the value in me spending time with my children. I don't want to parent like my father parented. And I value freedom really highly so that I can spend some time with my kids. Here's two people with the same highest value that are having this disgruntled, like you say, they're meeting it in different ways. I feel like these are really important conversations to be having.
Yeah, and it comes down to what's their interpretation of the word freedom. So the father's interpretation of the word freedom is security and making lots of money to be able to have that security and freedom in the future. The son's interpretation of freedom is connection with family, time with the family, which is connection. So they have the same value, but they've got different needs at the top. So when you can recognize, well, okay, dad's meeting the need of security, son's meeting the need of connection. This is why there's a disconnect in the way that the farm's been run now, or the way that they see that the farm should be run. But I respect that was dad's way for security, and I can respect that's the son's way of freedom, of connection.
Yeah, it's really powerful stuff. I just wish, it is a real challenge, and not only in farming space, like in business space, agribusiness, succession in general is a real problem because the work's changed right in the last 10 years or so. I'd also like to touch on people cross over, like, you have your needs, which are pretty sort of set in concrete, but values and wants. People will actually cross over things to get what they need, right? Like, so they might set their values, but potentially something else might become more pressing, and they start to cross over these. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so if people will have wants, and they will sacrifice their wants to meet a value on a higher level. And then people have values, but they will sacrifice a value to meet their need on the highest level. So it goes wants, values, needs. So if you want something, but it doesn't align with your values, then you won't go after it. If you want something and it doesn't align with your needs, then you won't go after it. So it's important, again, to, like, if you look about what do I want, how does this meet my values, and or does this want meet my values, and does it meet my needs? And if not, then you probably don't. It's probably just a desire. It's just something that you feel like you want, but it's not necessarily the best thing for you. So it's really important to line those up.
We probably see that on that connection space, right? Like people have affairs, and grass is greener on the other side of the fence, perhaps. Like, have you got some advice really around someone who is maybe not happy in those spaces?
Around the, do you mean around the connections? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So, some people, like I say, they're seeking, like, so you got these core needs. Maybe they're not getting connection at home. And this is where you see people start to look elsewhere for connection, for example. It's a really interesting space to go into, but what advice would you have for people who are maybe in that place?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a great example, like maybe the relationship's on the rocks, you're not getting a lot of connection at home. So I'll just go down to the pub and hang out with the boys, for an example, right? Because it gives me the connection. So what I would be doing is recognizing, shoot, I'm missing connection. How can I work on bringing more connection in the relationship back at home, or more connection with the kids at home, so that I recognize then that I'm filling up my cup more, or my need for connection, my cup of connection. And I meet that at home, so I don't go looking for a distraction, because then that can easily lead down a path of, affairs and all that kind of stuff as well. If you don't feel like you're getting the connection at home, then that can lead down the path of, well, I find someone else and they give me a lot of connection. And that might be through significance. Maybe you feel like you're not connected to the husband or wife at home because you don't feel significant. Maybe they run you down all the time. Maybe they're telling you you're terrible. Well, I'm going to go to the pub, get my connection there and talk to other people, which will make me feel significant. Oh, cool. No wonder I spend every Friday night at the pub, because I feel insignificant at home and I feel disconnected at home. So what I would be doing is working on how can I make the other person at home feel significant as well? How can I work on the connection at home as well? So then it'll be a back and forward, and it'll improve your level of connection and significance there as well.
Like I said at the start, I feel like these are the values, needs and wants, especially, around the needs are the operating system, that operates us almost like, your iPhone upgrade, and potentially just like iPhone and our Samsungs or Androids, we need to upgrade them every now and then, right? They have glitches and patches and fixes and such. Really important to revisit the stuff and recognize the patterns.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's a constant evolution and a work on as well. It's like a car. You've got to maintain it. If you don't maintain it, if you miss a service on the car, it might not impact you immediately, but it's going to impact you later down the track, especially if you miss 3 or 4 services. And I'm speaking from experience when I had a ute blow up on me. So initially I looked after it. I remember I bought this ute brand new and I looked after it. I serviced it like right on every time it said to service at the 5,000, the 10, the 20,000. And then after about 100,000 Ks, I missed a couple. And then another, then I went back and kind of got one. It was a bit more expensive to fix it. Then missed some more. And then at 250,000 Ks, it just stopped because I'd missed those servicing. And it's the same with ourselves. If we don't recognize those little things and service the little things as it's a little problem, it's going to manifest into something bigger and it's going to become a big problem.
Yeah, no, I really love that. I'd love to know one real key takeaway that you would like people to come away with from this conversation.
Yeah, I think it links back to any behavior that you've got that's a dysfunctional behavior or a bad habit. And I spoke about drinking, but it might just be scrolling Facebook, for example, for hours and hours on here. But really asking yourself, which of my 4 primal needs am I meeting out of this? Is this giving me connection? Is it giving me uncertainty? Is it giving me the certainty, or is it giving me significance? Which of those is it giving me? And then how can I find a behavior or a habit that meets that in a functional way rather than a dysfunctional way?
That's awesome. Heaps of gold. How do people connect with you if they want to touch base? You've had some pretty, you've had a viral post. You did one actually about suicide, which I think a while back had over 3,000 shares. What's it up to now? Do you know, or have you lost count?
I think it's 4,500 shares and about 120,000 views or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you work really, really hard in that space. How do people connect with you if they want to find out more?
Yep. So first one would be just look me up on Facebook, Shane Bird. I've got a blue tick as a meta verified person. So I think I might be the only Shane Bird that's meta verified. And also you can actually just come and join my Facebook group. And if you just type in any browser, theelitecoachgroup.com, it'll take you straight to that group. So theelitecoachgroup.com, and you can just connect with me there and follow some more of the stuff that I put out every week.
Yeah, no, I highly recommend anyone follow Shane, and he's changed my life through his coaching principles, and I'll be forever grateful for that. And I'd recommend anyone just jump on and follow you and get curious about what you have to offer.
Appreciate that, mate. Pleasure being here.
Oh, that's awesome. Really appreciate it. Heaps of gold, heaps of value. Thanks very much.
No problem.
If you've got this far, you've reached the end of the episode, or you've left your car running. I really hope you got something out of this episode of the Business Bloke podcast, and maybe you've got something to take away to apply to your own business. I'm a pretty friendly bloke, so you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just look up Andrew Savage, or on Instagram. The handle is TheBusinessBloke. Thanks for listening. Reach out, and we'll catch up with you soon. Good one. Cheers.